What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined as always by my dad Sean, and today reactions to the classics. We have a reaction to Leonard Cohen and his record Popular Problems, one of his last records ever. Yes. And we've already reviewed some Leonard songs as well as a record on here as well. So excited to kind of dive into some later Leonard work, though, because most of what we've done has been in the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a whole different Leonard.
Yeah, and this comes courtesy of a suggestion from our longtime supporter and patron, B Mac. Thank you, B Mac, for bringing this one to us.
He's a big Cohen fan.
Oh, man. Yeah, learned a lot about Cohen from you, and excited to dive into this. Before we do, though, if you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. That helps us out. Hit that big red subscribe button. We upload every single day in a wide variety of genres, and if you'd like to maybe have us review a record, you can check out our Patreon page down below. Shout out to the patrons who help.
Yeah, definitely, man. Keep this thing going.
Yeah. So all that to say, let's get it. We don't have a lot of quick facts, but we got some quick facts.
We got a little bit of stuff here. It's his 13th studio album, released in September of 2014. Won the Canadian Juno Award for the 2014 Album of the Year. In the U.S., it debuted at number 15 on the Billboard 200, number 1 on the folk albums, 4 on the top rock albums with 20,000 copies. So, of course, went to number 1 in Canada. Some thoughts from Bob Dylan on Cohen. Dylan was a big fan of Cohen. This is what he said about Leonard. When people talk about Leonard, they fail to mention his melodies, which to me, along with his lyrics, are his greatest genius, Dylan said. Even the counterpoint lines, they give a celestial character and melodic lift to every one of his songs. As far as I know, no one else comes close to this in modern music. Even the simplest song like The Law, which is structured on 2 fundamental chords, has counterpoint lines that are essential, and anybody who even thinks about doing this song and loves the lyrics would have to build around the counterpoint lines. His gift or genius is in his connection to the music of the spheres. B Mac had sent that to us, which is great. And I think it's interesting to note, we have compared Dylan and Leonard in some ways, both master lyricists, both not with the, what you would picture perfect voice, which I think gives them some charm and also lets them age well because their voices don't change that much. But interesting that Dylan recognizes the genius in Cohen.
And, it kind of made me think earlier this year you had Dylan release Rough and Rowdy Ways.
Right.
He was 79 when he released this. Cohen was already 80 years
old. Yeah, that's true. So they're right there.
So it is unique to note that these guys, they're able to age better than I think a lot of other singers who were, built in their younger years on having a voice that could go a ton of different octaves and do this or that. Whenever your, hook is how you can actually convey your emotions through your lyrics and use your voice to aid in that, I think it helps people like Cohen and Dylan. But always cool to see artists you love, give some shout outs to other artists you really enjoy too. So
I agree. And on this album, before we get into the customary religious imagery is here, with salvation sought for unspecified sins and sensuality strained through scripture. There's even a reference to the Hallelujah hymn. Upon its release, it received uniformly positive reviews from critics. Metacritic score of 86. AllMusic even wrote that at 80 years old, quote, Cohen not only has plenty left in the tank, but is at his most confident and committed. All songs are written by Cohen and Patrick Leonard, except where we indicate. We're going to kick this thing off, Trey, with a track called Slow. And Leonard makes sure he says in these lyrics, basically, that he likes to take things slow. And it's not because of his age.
Yeah, it's not because he's 80.
He's always liked to take things slow.
Yeah, and I found this a bit ironic because this was actually the shortest track on the record.
Yeah, maybe that was, an instrumentation was real subtle.
Yeah, it was even a little more faster tempo than you would think just with the title of the song. You had the organ in there. Of course, Leonard's coming in like a voice of a god just booming.
He sounds very authoritative in this song. That's actually in my notes.
Yeah, and really, I guess just through this whole record, it kind of adds the old wisdom just with age type of deal. Whenever you're coming in with that raspy voice that Leonard was able to do in this whole record, it kind of really makes you perk up being like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. And you also are introduced to some of the kind of musical techniques that are on here. You have the female backing vocals.
I was going to talk about that. Yeah.
Which I think bounce off his that deep voice well and give it a little softness.
Yeah, I was going to mention there's great female backings really throughout this album. We'll mention it on the songs that they really stand out. But I don't want to say it's a trick, but it's a technique as musicians age, as vocalists age. You got to have that good backing. You know, we saw McCartney in concert last year, and he had some great backing vocalists with him. They come in and help punch up, especially the choruses or the louder parts, and the females just want an absolute awesome touch of this, and great horns to finish this song.
Well, and even back in the 90s, we've done a couple song reactions to, we did to Anthem and Closing Time. He utilized that technique as well, so I'm glad to see that he continued to do that even to the very end of his career. Solid opener, I thought.
I thought as well.
But then our next track, man, it really brings some intensity. We have almost like the blues and the Hush lyrics that start this. I saw some people starving. There was murder. There was rape. Their villages were burning. They were trying to escape. Quite a harsh way to start the song. And he later notes there's torture and there's killing and there's all my bad reviews. Here, Leonard, as he does in a lot of the songs we've talked about, he's able to take a big bird's eye view of the world and its issues. Yet he also then relates it, as in the lyric I just said about his bad reviews. He's able to kind of relate that to himself and compare almost tragedies in a sense, which I think is a strong technique he's able to utilize.
Yeah, he's got great lyrics, as you mentioned. It opens this with him and the piano. I think you can almost feel a despair in his voice, which just is exactly kind of what this is about. It's just a fantastic tune. And now we're going to get to one of my favorites, Trey. Samson in New Orleans.
Yeah, and the last track had started some of those religious themes, and then it segues great into this tune, which, of course, based on the title, has some allusions to Samson from the Old Testament, who was one of the strongest men who ever lived, one of the greatest warriors ever. He got caught up though by Delilah.
The females, watch out, boys.
They ended up chopping his hair off, gouging out his eyes, blinding him, which Leonard again makes allusions to in this track. And then in the Bible, Samson's chained up at the end in a temple, and he's able to regain his strength. He takes and eventually he kills himself, but he kills everybody else in the temple.
He takes them all out.
And Leonard's able to utilize that. Obviously, a very well-read guy.
And this one was written after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in August of 2005. Great songwriting. It actually starts out accusing God about the destruction in New Orleans, ends with him thinking he needs to clean things up that may have caused it, that his sinning and everything might be to blame. Chilled, favorite vocal of his so far on this album.
Well, and this was actually my favorite instrumental up to this point, and one of my favorites on the record, because you had the violin in the middle and in the outro that I thought gave it that sweetness with just the intense lyrics Leonard's going with here.
For sure.
As you mentioned, it kind of ends up in questioning God about how did you allow this to happen, and then, like you said, at the end, he's going forth saying, I'm going to kind of take control here. Very thought-provoking tune for sure.
Very much. That's going to already lead us to the fourth track, A Street. This one was written by Cohen and a Johnny Thomas. Many of the songs on this album had previous incarnations as poems or songs performed live and or in sound checks before 2014. This one was first recited by Leonard in 2006 during promotion of his book, Poetry of Longing. It appeared in the New Yorker magazine in 2009. This is the first time on the album that Leonard writes from a woman's perspective. Some have speculated he's actually writing because from the woman that he left, his longtime partner, and their two children, but who knows. Leonard also said 9/11 was an inspiration for this, and also wrote with the things in mind on that day.
Yeah, and this one, you got the organ and the female vocals coming back in full force here, which I enjoyed. And then, lyrically, a powerful tune. Looking at all the bleak reality that we live in, I mean, there's references to the Civil War here, some veiled Holocaust references, 9/11 as you mentioned, but at the end of the day, there was a touch of hope, I think, here, because Leonard notes, I've landed on my feet, let's all go have a drink type of thing, trying to persevere just through the tragedies that we live in a worldwide basis. And so I thought it was a solid song.
I thought it was a solid song too. I mean, I thought the lyricism was great. The song itself for me was just okay on this album, but that's not a bad thing. The reference to 9/11 is speculated on the corner where there used to be a street, talking about the World Trade Center. That's going to take us to song number 5. Did I Ever Love You? It's kind of a bluesy song, back and forth question and answers between Cohen and his backup singer. It's one of only 2 love songs on the album. All kinds of questions about the relationship and what it all meant. Just questions really for the great majority of the song. Little piano to start. You can feel his emotion. The female backing then comes in, speeds it up. Almost sounds country to me.
Country bluegrass. You have the most.
But then it dies back off into like the chilled out start. But yeah, it was an interesting arrangement that I hadn't heard out of Leonard before.
Yeah, I love the guitar in that portion, and it is kind of cool, I think, to have Leonard's questions that are very solemn and, coming from a man who's lived and lived a lot, and then, you get those female vocals saying those exact same questions back to him, except at the very end, he notes, "Was I ever someone who could love you forever?" But there is no response from the backing vocals there, so it's almost a question Leonard's asking and doesn't have a follow-up to, so to speak. So I enjoyed this one. I thought this one was great, and I think it was kind of needed in the record. Not that you need a love song or something lighter, but after the heaviness of the first half of the record, I
agree.
It was cool.
Nice touch. That's going to take us to My Oh My. This is pretty much the most straight up writing. A lot of times with Leonard stuff, he's so brilliant that you kind of got to really dissect the lyrics. But this is just basically about a love lost, a little bit in reminiscence of kind of a Neil Young, a fellow Canadian for him, style.
Yeah, and this one was, lyrically definitely the weakest on the record, but I still thought it was a bit catchy at points. Not one I'm going to revisit a ton per se, but again, I liked it for what it was. And
nice little break in the style too. Next up is Nevermind. This one first appeared as a poem in 2005 on a website, and in 2006 in his poetry Book of Longing, and evolved eventually to this song with changed lyrics and title from Nevermind with a space to Nevermind, all one word. 2015 was the opening theme of the 2nd season of True Detective, and basically Travis deals with the futility of wars. Talks about, kind of the grand design of being a cog in the machinery. Yeah,
and here I thought, again, it had that danceable beat, which is interesting in a Leonard Cohen tune, because
definitely, especially with this sort of lyrical meaning.
Yeah, he's talking about war, and yet we got a beat in the background that makes you want to get up and groove a little bit. I thought that was a cool little touch there. And here he's talking about how they wanted to make museums and take our clothes and spoons and whatnot and remember it that way. He notes names that were incredibly important to him are just dust to other. He says there's truth that lives and truth that dies, which comes back to the old adage, war is written by the victors. And, ultimately, we can't fully know what actually happened hundreds of years ago in these wars.
No, of course we don't.
But, all these people had names and faces to them. And even if we can go and put them in a museum or this or that, we ultimately don't know. And that cog in the machine that you were talking about.
Exactly. And I think on this one, the women's backing vocals, the female backing vocals, take a huge role, and it really helps it out. Now we're going to move to the next to last song, and my favorite song on here, Born in Chains. This one was first debuted on stage in 2010, but changed a lot from that version to this version. He first performed as early as 1985 during a sound check in Europe. Used a little different lyrics then as well. Through the years, Cohen referred to the song as Taken Out of Egypt, reciting it on a show in 1988 and humming it to the new melody in a 2005 documentary, Leonard Cohen, I'm Your Man. Talks about God, God's pain, starts with the Exodus, has an organ. It has this kind of gospel feel, almost feels like a gospel choir in there. But it's interesting that Leonard had these songs for so long, and I wonder if he thought he knew he was probably nearing the end as we get older and wanted to get this out along with many of these other ones. What did you think of it?
Oh, this was one of my favorites as well. I love the story of it, and it's interesting. Some of the questions he asked in Samson in New Orleans, where it's almost more of an angry stance. This now changes to a more understanding stance, I guess, towards God, seeing how even God's love is able to permeate in life sufferings. Notes that God was wounded too, in that sense, and just bringing the whole biblical allusions. And I thought was just a very wise way he was able to bring all that together, and for that reason, it was one of my favorites. And then that already takes us to the final track.
You Got Me Singing, which on this one I'm curious what you think about this. It's basically talking about someone he cares about, and despite the difficult circumstances, he sees the positive. So it's either about a girl or it's about God, in my opinion. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought this was a fitting closer. Recognized the troubles of the world, and yet it hoped in God or a love, as you mentioned, Dad, to carry on through it all. I think that's another great technique Cohen's able to do, is the multiple interpretations here. And again, it has that sense of a guy who's lived a long life, has wisdom looking back, and again, a little bit of that country bluegrass instrumentation to end us out.
Yeah, and that's going to take us already to our favorite tracks. I kind of already mentioned mine. Born in Chains and Samson in New Orleans.
Born in Chains is going to be mine. I also am going to go with Did I Ever Love You and Never Mind. And now that's going to take us to our overall score of this record. Pretty succinct album, Dad. Only 9 tracks, about 35 minutes, and I quite enjoyed this one, which I think shows the multi-talented way that Leonard was, because like we mentioned, he was 80 years old when this came out, and yet I'm sitting here almost 25, still able to relate to what he's saying in a lot of these songs, because what he's writing about is timeless, which I think is not needed for a great songwriter, but it works pretty well here, and Leonard's able to show that, man. So I dug the instrumentation. I dug even his vocal performances. I thought they were well done and exactly what they needed to be. And there wasn't really a weak track, I didn't think, on the record. So I'm going to go with 7.5.
All right, yeah, I'm going to be right there on those lines with you. I think, it's an 80-year-old man entering the twilight of his life. Lots of wisdom, lots of authority. Like I said, punched it up nicely with the female backings, the instrumentation was nice. Just a really good, well put together album. I agree with you, not a weak track on here. I'm going to be at a 7.75 on it. So just a fantastic offering. Thank you for bringing it to us, B-Mac.
Yeah, definitely. And we'd love to know your thoughts on this record down below. Be sure to leave us a comment there. As always, Dad, appreciate the research. Appreciate you, B-Mac. And until next time, y'all, thanks for watching. Happy listening, and we will see ya.